Excuse me, you need to get out of the seat and move to the back of the bus to make room for this man.
No.
If you don't move right now, I'm gonna call the police right now.
There are no seats back there.
Get angry.
Ma'am, get up. Under arrest.
Joe Ann Robinson was born in Culloden, Georgia on April 17, 1912. After earning a master's degree, she moved to Montgomery, Alabama to teach Alabama State College. In the late 1940s, Robinson experienced racial segregation when she was yelled at for sitting in the empty white section of a bus. Robinson eventually went on to become the president of the Women's Political Council and met with the mayor of Montgomery, William A. Guile. However, the city wasn't denied their demands to integrate buses, so Robinson, MLK, ED, Nixon, and the local leaders get together to plan the boycott.
On December 3rd, 1955, the Women's Political Council took to the streets in order to publicize the upcoming boycott. Joe Ann Robinson and the other members of the WPC put huge efforts into making the bus boycott a success. They made and distributed lots of leaflets and flyers for the boycott. They also received support from Montgomery religious leaders. Posters could be seen through the city. An ad was even published in the papers on December 4th, 1955.
Come on, little Maybelline. Up you go.
The boycott was a huge success. 90% of African Americans residing in Montgomery, Alabama, stayed off of the public buses on December 5th, 1955. Civil rights leaders were impressed with the boycott's success and decided to prolong the boycott in order to obtain the results they wanted. The leaders were willing and ready to fight for the victory they would create. In order to complete this task, the Montgomery Improvement Association, or the MIA, was formed. The elected leader of the MIA would be no other than Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who had recently moved to preach at a church in Montgomery, Alabama. There were other local leaders involved, as well as E.D. Nixon, another well-known civil rights leader. Later, the MIA would also support other events that promoted integration in Montgomery, Alabama, not only the bus boycott.
I would like to open the floor in this democratic meeting. Since we are going to continue with the boycott, what do you want as a result?
I want to be treated fairly. I want to sit where I would like to.
I want the possibility to become a bus driver.
Martin Luther King Jr. took note of what the people of Montgomery wanted and what he himself wanted for the future. On December 6, 1955, MLK approached reporters to share his demands and the demands of those in the MIA.
We, the Montgomery Improvement Association, would like 3 demands to be met by the city. Courteous treatment by the bus operators was guaranteed. Passengers were seated on a first-come, first-served basis. Negro seating from the back of the bus toward the front, while whites seated in.
The city refused to meet the demands of Martin Luther King and the MIA. This fueled the want for bus segregation to be ended altogether, so the bus boycott continued.
From the front to the back. Negro bus operators were employed on predominantly Negro routes.
One of the biggest questions I needed to be answered at this meeting was, how do we get to and from work? And what transportation should we use if we can't use the buses? The answer to this question would be found when taxis offered low fares to those participating in the boycott.
Taxi, I heard it was cheaper because of the boycott.
Sounds good to me.
Taxi!
That'll only be 10 cents. Thank you for staying off the buses.
The taxi system worked very well until the city started to demand that taxi drivers charge the standard 45 cents opposed to the 10 cents that was being charged. If they refused to do so, the cab driver would be arrested. Most boycotters could no longer afford to pay for taxis and had no good transportation solution.
Talk a little bit about what it was like living in Montgomery back in the 1950s, being black and living in Montgomery in the 1950s.
Well, I was raised in I come up in a black and colored world. I would say colored and white world, and everything was segregated. The schools, the churches, the hospitals, and everything was segregated. There were signs saying white and colored all over.
Along with the success of the boycott, there was a lot of tragedy as well. Many whites tried to stop the boycott by harming and harassing those involved in the boycott. On June 30th, 1956, Martin Luther King Jr.'s house was bombed by white segregationists. It was meant as a retaliation against the success. Aurelia S. Browder versus William A. Gale, or as it is commonly known, Browder versus Gale, is a court case that was filed against Mayor William A. Gale because of the mistreatment of four women: Claudette Colvin, Aurelia S. Browder, Susie McDonald, and Mary Louise Smith, on the Montgomery public bus system. The court case challenged the segregation policies on the bus in Montgomery, Alabama. This case made it to the Supreme Court. On June 5, 1956, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the policies on buses in Montgomery were unconstitutional. Martin Luther King was pleased by the victory, but would not call off the boycott until the integration policies were completed. On December 20, 1956, the Supreme Court ordered the desegregation of the buses in Montgomery, Alabama. That same day, Martin Luther King Jr. and the MIA voted to finally end the boycott. The Montgomery Bus Boycott had lasted 381 days. On December 21st, 1956, buses in Montgomery were fully integrated.
Despite the joy over the end of the successful boycott, many tragic events occurred due to the racial prejudice that still existed and the white anger over the desegregation. On December 23rd, 1956, a shot was fired into Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's home. No one was harmed. On December 24th, 1956, a 15-year-old African-American woman was beat up at a bus station by several white men. On December 25th, 1956, Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth's house was bombed in Birmingham, Alabama. Reverend Shuttlesworth was a civil rights activist working to integrate the bus system in Birmingham, Alabama. On December 26, 1956, snipers targeted Montgomery buses. On December 28, 1956, Rosa Jordan, a pregnant black woman, is shot while riding a bus. All of these tragic events happened after the desegregation and show that despite the victory in this particular movement, there was still much improvement needed in order for there to be equality.
We are soldiers.